regarding the county, including transportation. But before we do that, let's meet Commissioner Holen.
Thank you, Luke. And thank you all for joining us. Arapahoe County is one of the fastest growing counties in Colorado, and the pandemic did nothing to slow that momentum. Those of us who have been here for a while know that this is a great place to live, to raise a family, to start and run businesses. One byproduct of this, that more and more people want to come here and to Colorado in general. The growing places increasing demands on our transportation infrastructure in terms of the volume of everyday traffic, the maintenance necessary to keep everything running as smoothly as possible. And for the past few years, Arapahoe County Public Works and Development Department has worked closely with the Board of County Commissioners and other departments to create a transportation master plan that envisions how our transportation needs and challenges will unfold between now and 2040. The project has involved extensive research, study sessions, consulting with our community partners and other stakeholders, and public feedback from folks like you. Some of you on the line tonight have probably completed one of our many surveys or attended transportation-focused events. It's important that we receive as many comments of our constituents as possible to ensure that we understand what your needs are in terms of the transportation area. The Public Works Department has gathered all this information into a master plan that you'll hear more about tonight. Thank you again for being here. And with that, I'd like to introduce Transportation Manager Jim Hetzner. Jim?
Thank you, Commissioner Holen. It's great to be here tonight, and it's great to talk about such an important topic as transportation. This is all vital to us as we get around our daily lives on our transportation system. Next slide, please. So as Commissioner Holen mentioned, Arapahoe County is taking upon this effort and in direct conjunction with the Board of County Commissioners. We also enlisted the help of the Arapahoe County Transportation Forum, which is a group of transportation-minded people. They come together and they talk about transportation, hence the name, Transportation Forum. But it's everybody within the county, every municipality within the county but one. We also enlisted the help from the Public Works Department, which I'm employed in. And we have several divisions in there that really help with this, planning for one, engineering services for another. We also worked with CDOT and the area Metro District, and then we also worked with the public and other stakeholders. The reason why we're doing the Transportation Master Plan is the last edition of the Transportation Master Plan was in 2035. So this is a much needed update as things have changed and they change over time. Also, the population continues to grow here in the county, and we need to adjust the plan to reflect that. So the study is done, and it looks at the existing conditions. So what roads do we have here in the county? What other modes of transportation do we have? Also, what are the land uses in the county? And then we also project ahead using that land use at a forecast. So we look at the needs of the transportation in the future. We also enlist the public and other stakeholders to help us develop values and strategies and goals for the transportation network. And then we also do a financial analysis because we know all this takes some money to accomplish. So the project started in April of 2020 and will be wrapping up in November of 2021. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, there were goals that were established in this process. And there's 4 of them listed here, and these were the 4 of the Transportation Master Plan. Before I read through them, every goal has a policy and a strategy associated with them. So the number 1 goal that we had, and these aren't in any particular order, but the first goal I'm going to mention is promoting an efficient and balanced transportation system. The county is unique. It's a lot of rural area and a lot of urban area or urban area, and each of these systems have a unique look at it from a transportation point of view, and we need to take that into mind. So we need to have a balanced transportation system. Number two is promote alternative transportation solutions. So as areas develop, there's more room to do bike and ped options, and also transit options. We have a great system here along I-25 in the light rail system. These are the alternative transportation solutions we'll be looking at. Number three is coordinate land use and transportation. As we mentioned, as population comes to the county, it'd be good to develop in a way that is smart and geared towards thinking about lowering the demand of transportation. So the idea would be having homes close to where we work. Number four is continue a strategic management and tracking approach to the county's transportation system. So in a way, measuring how well we're doing with the transportation master plan and adjusting accordingly. Next slide, please. So one of the ways that we develop these visions and goals and values is we enlisted the public. We also enlisted the public to give us direct feedback on challenges that they're seeing in the transportation network and things they would like to see. So we engaged the public at 3 different times throughout the process. And right when we got started, or right after we got started, COVID hit. And we had to adjust on how we're going to engage the public. So we use a variety of tools, and most of our public engagement was done virtually, as you can imagine. But we thought we did this very successfully. On the right here is a map that we use to obtain feedback. And I hope some of you participated in that. One of the things that was unique, even though we're talking about Commissioner Holen's district, which is largely in Aurora, this transportation master plan focuses not just on unincorporated Arapahoe County, but on the whole of Arapahoe County, including all the jurisdictions. So we received 800 comments in our public engagement process, and no surprise to those on the line. Some of the top priorities that we heard were traffic congestion and traffic safety. Road maintenance was also something that was voiced regularly, along with multimodal improvements. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Luke to get some more public feedback.
Thank you, Jim. As Jim says, the people we've heard from so far have cited traffic congestion and safety as top priorities. I want to give you a little phone poll right here. So if you are here if you're listening to us on the phone, you can answer these questions by pressing a button. And the question is, what is your top priority as far as transportation goes as we plan this out over the next couple of decades? Press 1 if your top priority is addressing congestion. Press 2 if it's safety. Press 3 if it's maintaining favorable road conditions and road maintenance. Press 4 if it's adding or enhancing public transportation options, and press 5 if it's adding or enhancing things like bike and pedestrian lanes and carpool lanes and things like that. So one more time, press 1 if your top concern is addressing traffic congestion. Press 2 if it's safety. Press 3 if it's road maintenance. Press 4 if it's adding or enhancing public transportation options, and press 5 if it's adding or enhancing things like bike and pedestrian and carpool lanes. I will tabulate all those and give you the results, and then we're going to have a couple more polling questions for you. So let's go to the next slide, and I'll pass it back to Jim.
All right, thank you, Luke. So now we're going to get into some of the findings of our study of the Transportation Master Plan. So we looked at existing conditions, and what we found was there was 44 intersections or road segment hotspots. Many of you run into those daily or when you travel, and they can be very frustrating. Out of those 44, 10 were in unincorporated parts of the county. 34 were located in municipalities, so like Aurora, Centennial, and so on. So the plan looked at these, and we didn't, because of the plan's nature, we didn't drill down into, there's a grade separation needed here or turn lanes, but we identified them, and then further studies and further design will pick out the right solution for those. But what we did is we looked at improvement toolboxes in general. So our physical changes needed. So adding a turn lane, increasing a turn radii, or signals, or timing coordination. Also, what about the pavement and surface markings, and then signing? So these were some of the improvements that we would recommend, that future efforts would look into. So once again, we identified 44 hotspots, and you can see that here on the map. And you can see there's going through this area. Parker Road was identified with some large segments of hotspots. Next slide, please. So the plan is going to make some recommendations, and those recommendations center around, at least from a roadway standpoint, they center around new connections and also road extensions. So if a road doesn't exist, building a brand new road. They also center around transit and multimodal, or in terms of bike ped improvements. So I wanted to give you a few examples of projects in the central part of the county. And whenever I say central, I mean I-25 east to E470. So one of the projects that was identified was, it was widening of Smoky Hill. So the widening of Smoky Hill would be from E470 to Buckley. And now this goes through 3 jurisdictions. It goes through Arapahoe County, it goes through Aurora and Centennial. And the project costs $14 million. And we recommend that it be completed by 2030. So that's one example, and you can see that there in the red in the middle of your screen. Another example project, which isn't captured here on this screen because we're actually building it now, but I guess we got a jump start on that project. But the example project would be Inverness Drive West, which is just to the east of I-25 near the county border, and that is putting a on-street bike facility on that corridor. The cost is just shy of $6 million, and we're recommending it being done by 2030, which we should accomplish that here in the next 3 years. The county, it maintains this road, but we have some great partners in the Inverness area, and that's Inverness Metro District and SpyMed, and they're really helping us out with that project. So next slide, please. So another area I wanted to highlight is just to the east of E470. So this is the fastest growing area of the county. And this area of the county, as I mentioned, we have road widening, and then we also have a road extension. So I'll touch base on both of those. So the plan identifies the widening of Gun Club from Quincy to Aurora Parkway. So that we just completed a project there at Quincy and Gun Club. So this project would just be south of that. The 2 jurisdictions involved would be the county and the city of Aurora. And the project is projected to be $17 million. And we're recommending it to be completed by 2030. Excuse me. The county has started preliminary designs on this project, and we look forward to hitting this target and get it constructed by 2030. An example of a road extension project would be 6th Avenue and extending it from Powhatan to Harvest. So that's captured here on the right side, or I guess it's a central part of this picture here. And that's a much needed project. We're recommending that be completed by 2030, and the cost is $11 million. The 2 jurisdictions involved with that project would be Arapahoe County and Aurora. Next slide, please. So in regards to transit, so the county transportation master plan is making recommendations to engage with the Reimagined RTD and Accountability Committee and looking at their recommendations. As you can imagine, since COVID, the ridership on transit has declined. It's rebounded a little bit, not as much as we'd like to see. So we're looking at encouraging that growth, and I think it's just a matter of time. The plan also recommends exploring transit expansion. So bus route extensions with new development. So as new developments happen on this eastern area, that we include bus routes to it. Also, expanding east along I-70 with RTD or with a CDOT-led service. And that's captured here in the map on the right. There's a lot of activity out there on I-70, and it's going to continue. So we think it's a great idea to look at transit along that corridor. Also, we recommend coordinating on bus rapid transit or enhanced busing corridors. And those are captured here in the maroon on your screen as options to look for BRT. Also, another recommendation is coordinate with cities to establish mobility hubs. So that's where it's an area where people can switch modes. Either park and ride, or you can get on from a bus to a light rail or a car to a light rail. So doing a mobility hubs and building those throughout this urban area. There's also 40 bicycle and pedestrian projects, and those are mostly taken from the bike and ped plan that was completed a few years ago. And then also we're recommending supporting emerging technologies. Next slide, please. So the financial outlook of this plan, like I mentioned earlier, these improvements are cost money. So we'll continue to look at that. The road widening and new connections and paving, along with bike ped projects, are estimated to cost about $250 million over the next 20 years. This does not include interchanges or transit. Interchanges like I-25 and Bellevue are estimated to cost $100 million, at least for the ultimate improvement. So that's very expensive, and you can see that's just shy or half of the $250 million. So those aren't included in that cost estimate. So we're just wrapping up that portion of the financial analysis. Also with the plan, as I mentioned earlier, performance measures. So how is the plan doing? What adjustments do we need to be made? So we wanted to make sure that our performance measure captured what what the public thought was important. So percent of congested vehicle hours traveled is something that we can measure that would track that congestion that the public was concerned about. Also, tracking the number and severity of crashes is also important to address public safety, but more importantly, public safety as it relates to transportation. And then for road condition, we thought we could track pavement condition, and that would be utilizing a payment management system to track how our payments are doing. Also, for mobility, that mobility component that was mentioned by the public, tracking the amount of bike lane miles that we have installed in the county, and then also maybe a mobility measurement, which would be access to public transit. These are the things that we're considering, and we'll be finalizing these here in the next week or so. Next slide, please. So with that, I will take questions. I know I went through that relatively quickly, so I imagine there's some questions that you might have.
All right. Thank you, Jim. Just to remind everybody, if you're on the phone and want to ask a question of Jim or the Commissioner Holen, we also have PWD Director Brian Weimer on the phone as well. If you have a question for any of those folks, dial *3 on your phone and you'll be put through to an operator. Or you can plug a question into the comments box if you're watching us online. I should also mention that this will be recorded and will be available. You can view the slides. If you're only watching or listening on the phone, you can view the slides tomorrow on our website. It's usually posted within about 24 hours. So with that, let me give you the results of the first polling question, which was about transportation priorities. It's roughly mirrored what the PWD surveys have found in the past, and that is 37% of you said that congestion is a top priority. 16% said safety is top. 21% both said favorable road conditions and enhancing public transportation were the top concerns. And then 5% said it was adding things like pedestrian and carpool and bike lanes, which makes a certain amount of sense given how spread out the county can be in spots. I will ask another polling question here shortly. But before we do that, let's go to our first phone call. And this is Sandra, and she has a question about the traffic in a school area. Sandra, you are live.
Yes. We live right across the street from Lansing Elementary, and the congestion of traffic has gotten to the point where it's dangerous to even get out of our driveway. I have screamed at various people. The school gets told that it's up to the city to fix the problem. I call the city says it's up to the school. The school and I try to solve the problem, and the city shuts us down. So what's it going to take to solve a transportation problem around the school? And it's on three sides. And I have talked to every single neighbor that lives across the street from the school, and it's just nonstop complaints about people not paying attention. There's no traffic control. It's a simple problem, but nobody cares what I have to say about it. So what would it take to get some cooperation?
For those of you who don't know, Lansing Elementary, this is in Aurora, is that correct?
Correct. It's on 6th and Lansing.
Okay. Jim, you want to take that one first?
Yes, thank you, Luke. And that's a great question. And even though this is in the city of Aurora, we have very similar complaints in our county. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to take this issue to Aurora. But what we do in the county to address these things, and what I imagine the city of Aurora would do as well, is to work with the city and then also the transportation or traffic folks there at the city and county, or at the city of Aurora. These are not real easy issues to deal with, and it takes a lot of coordination and a lot of work together. As a school, what we do in the county is we work with the school to develop an operations plan, if you would, a method of handling traffic every morning. And we work with them to come up with a good solution on how to route traffic through and out of a school area. And it varies in the morning and the evening, or at pickup. So that's a really important step. One of the things that is challenging is trying to get the school to coordinate and come up with a good plan, and then also getting the parents to follow that plan. So there's that enforcement component. So working with the city of Aurora is really important, and the school district, and then the sheriff or the city police department might have to come in and help intervene. So these are not easy solutions, and it'll definitely take a coordinated effort. But I'll reach out to Aurora tomorrow and pass along your concern. Is there a way I can get your name and number to pass along?
She has hung up, but Sandra, if you're still listening, if you could call back in and have somebody get your number for us, that would be great. And also, I wanted to follow up, Jim. Generally speaking, when someone has a specific complaint like this, they should go to first their city, and is a specific department in the city, or?
Yeah, that's a good question. Working with the school is really important. And then also going to the Public Works Department within the city of Aurora is another avenue. And you can do both. And then also working with the sheriff's office. A lot of these schools will have school resource officers. And if they don't know the right solution, they should be able to coordinate with the school and the city. And a lot of times they're kind of that middle person where they can work with both parties and be level-headed, and hopefully you even bring some friends along to help with enforcing the problems if there is an enforcement issue.
Great.
And
also, yeah, go ahead, Commissioner.
I think the key issue here is the safety of the children, and I would encourage parents to talk to the superintendent, Aurora Superintendent Office, as well as their district or ward representatives on the Aurora City Council, and that will help bring that issue to the mayor and to the chief of police. I think they're very responsive when citizens gather together and raise an issue of concern, in particular when it relates to the safety of children leaving and coming to school. So that's what I'd strongly recommend.
Great, that's good stuff. And then we have, like I said, Public Works Director Brian Weimer is also joining us. He has something to add to this as well. Brian, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I think we're starting to see a lot of this, even more than prior to the pandemic, and a lot of it's due to reduction in bus traffic or bus services because of lack of drivers that school districts are dealing with. So, there's more drop-off, there's more vehicles involved with this circulation issue. And within the county, as Jim mentioned, we do a transportation audit, which not only looks at kind of circulation patterns, but we also look at safety, how pedestrians are getting to and from the school, walking, the drop-off, and a lot of times we make suggestions to the school relative to times that they can do drop-offs. This is a particular concern with elementary school age kids. So, we might have a lion designation that starts at 7:30 to 7:45, and then bears can drop off between 7:45 and 8, and that sometimes helps the situation in terms of the amount of traffic that's arriving all at one time. So hopefully that gives you some answers as to what we do in unincorporated Arapahoe County. And as Jim said, we'll communicate this with our partners in the city of Aurora.
Excellent, thank you. And we have been able to get Sandra's phone number, so someone will be in touch with you within the next day or so. All right, so before we go to the next audience question, I have another polling question for all of you. Those of you on the phone, you're going to press a number based on your best response to this question, and on a scale of 1 to 5, how likely are you to recommend living in Arapahoe County to someone else? So press 1 if you're very likely to recommend it. Press 2 if you're somewhat likely. Press 3 if you're neutral. Press 4 if you're somewhat unlikely. And press 5 if you're very unlikely. So once again, how likely are you to recommend living in Arapahoe County to someone else? 1 is very likely. 2 is somewhat likely. 3 is neutral. 4 is somewhat unlikely. And 5 is very unlikely. All right. So we're still screening some calls here. I have an online question. Debbie is asking, are there plans to widen Glen Club Road north of Quincy?
Yeah, Luke, I'll go ahead and take that. So
Alrighty.
north of Quincy on Gun Club is a CDOT road, so it's a State Highway 30. So the plan does call for that to be widened eventually to 6 lanes. So currently, I don't know of any plans to widen that road. We're working with CDOT and encouraging them to put some plans forth. As you know, CDOT has some very important highways in the area, I-25, I-70, and I-225, and they spend a lot of their budget on those. And they've also developed a 10-year plan capturing those improvements along those roads and along the state highways. If that road, which it's not, if it's not captured in that 10-year plan, so there aren't any immediate plans to widen that part of Gun Club. Once again, we've identified it as a high priority. So we'll be working with CDOT and having conversations with them to see how we can elevate this project.
Great. And so that's the intersection, if I'm not mistaken, where we did the partial continuous flow intersection, correct?
Yes, that is correct. So that project is just wrapped up. And then I mentioned earlier, we're doing a project just south of there to widen Gun Club to 4 lanes. So the question's a great one. You go from on the south part of this area from Aurora Parkway, which is 6 lanes, and as you go north, it would make sense when you go north of Quincy that it would also be 4 lanes once
Right.
this is all widened. So it's a great question, and I think there's some perception there that it's a need.
Yeah, I mean, and certainly a lot of our growth is headed in that direction. You mentioned earlier also the I-70 corridor. For those of you who live out there or work out there, or spend any time out there, you should go to our website. The PWD department page has a number of studies and maps and videos and that kind of thing that talk about the kind of growth that we're anticipating moving east, since that's where most of the empty land is at the moment. And that's something that we're going to be addressing, in all aspects of life in Arapahoe County over the next 10 or 20 years. So let's see. Let's get another question here from Bob online. He's asking, how do we prioritize projects in PWD? What do you decide goes first and second and so forth under normal conditions?
Yeah, that's a great question. And using this plan to help prioritize these projects is a good starting point. But as you progress in time, sometimes our partners will be wanting to build a road a little sooner because of development or because of an opportunity with a grant. That's almost like sharpening the pencil. We know the needs there, and then the exact timing. A lot of it comes down to adjusting to development that's coming up, looking for opportunities with partners, looking for grant opportunities as well. And then also with development, as development rolls on, the county has a policy for developers to pay their own way. So if a development comes in, they're able to contribute to an improvement. So right now, the gun club gun club corridor is a high priority for us. So we'll be focusing on that corridor and in projects along this way or in that area. Another way that we prioritize projects is we use the Board of County Commissioners as we put projects forward. We have a rating system that gives us an idea of how this will score relative to the county strategic plan. So when we work through that process with the Board of County Commissioners, and that helps determine our priorities as well.
And those of you who don't follow government closely, we may not realize this is the time of year when we're determining budgets for the upcoming year. So that's how a lot of that stuff gets prioritized according to the plans we've laid out for the general county operations. Brian, you had something to add about the gun club area. Why don't you go ahead and tell us about that?
Yeah, one of the things that we're looking at and we're discussing with CDOT right now is the opportunities to maybe pursue federal funding at Gun Club and Hamden, which seems to be the next critical intersection after Gun Club and Quincy that we did. That seems to be where we're starting to see a lot of congestion, a lot of backup, and seeing if we can maybe improve that, pursue some federal funding associated with that. So those discussions actually just started last week, so we'll see where that plays out over the next few months, and when we start pursuing federal grants, that will be after the first of the year. So just wanted to throw that out as one of the things that we're looking at. And again, leveraging funding from other sources outside of Arapahoe County helps us move projects forward and raises the priority of those projects.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay, let me give you the results of the second polling question. That was, how likely are you to recommend living in Arapahoe County to someone else? 41% said you're very likely, 19% said somewhat likely, 26% are neutral, 4% are somewhat unlikely, and 10% are very unlikely. So we usually get stronger numbers, and this happened the other night too, where there's more people on the negative side of it. If you want to send us an email to communicationsservices@arapahoegov.com, we'd love to hear what it is about the county that makes you not so sure you'd recommend it anymore. I suspect it might have a lot to do with growth, but we'd love to hear more about anyone's opinion about that. So I will ask another polling question here in a moment, but let's take another online question. Brian mentioned the getting funding from the federal government, from the state in certain circumstances. Jim, can you talk a little bit about the value of partnerships. I mean, we have a county whose roads go across quite a few geographies, and so our work on them might end right at the county line, but of course the road does not. So how do we leverage partnerships to make these projects move quicker, that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a great question, and Luke, and you're right. This transportation master plan, I didn't get into it in too much detail, but we identified 24 key corridors through the county, and those key corridors are roads like Arapahoe Road, Bellevue, I-25, I-225, those roads. And if you drive along a road like Arapahoe Road, for instance, and you start on the west side, you start like on the very edge of Littleton. You drive through Centennial, you hit a state highway, then you hit unincorporated parts of the county, you hit a Foxfield, then you hit Aurora. So that road is very common to see a change in jurisdictions from municipalities to a state highway. So like you mentioned, Luke, coordinating with the local governments and with the state government is very important to getting these improvements done. So we have open conversations, and this transportation master plan did that. We sat down in 23 separate meetings talking about each of these corridors and identifying the vision along these corridors. Also, what improvements do we want to see along this corridor? So those are really important conversations to lay that groundwork to start pursuing projects together, making sure we're on the same page with what we think the corridor should look like is very good. And then also, as we identify that vision, we can identify projects to help get there. And then you can start identifying how to get there with funding. And those conversations and those relationships are ongoing, and they've been very fruitful. The county's brought in a tremendous amount of federal dollars and dollars from other partners. I think, it wasn't highlighted in one of the slides, but of the widening projects, not very many of them, I don't know if any of them were just strictly county funded projects. Most of them had a partner or a surrounding jurisdiction that was there with us that we need to coordinate with. So I appreciate the question, and coordinating is very important to get any projects done here in the county.
Absolutely, as it is in many walks of the work we do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to ask a final polling question. This one is about your interactions with the Arapahoe County government specifically. So if you're on the phone and you want to ask a question of the commissioner or of Jim or Brian, dial *3 and that'll put you through to an operator. For this polling question, how satisfied are you about your interactions with the Arapahoe County government? Press 1 if you've been very satisfied. Press 2 if you've been somewhat satisfied. Press 3 if you're neutral or if you haven't had enough interactions to know what the answer is. Press 4 if you've been somewhat dissatisfied. And press 5 if you've been very dissatisfied. Once again, 1 if you've been very satisfied. 2 if you've been somewhat satisfied. 3 if you've been neutral or it's not applicable. 4 if you've been somewhat dissatisfied, and 5 if you've been very dissatisfied. And once again, we always like to hear if we're coming up short in any way, we want to hear why and figure out how we can make it better for you. So with that, let's go to another online question. Jim, in the slideshow, you mentioned keeping up with emerging technologies. What are some of the technologies that are sort of emerging now versus the ones that we might see 2, 5, 10 years from now, and ones that you guys are keeping an eye on?
Yeah, that's a good question, Luke. One of the emerging technologies here in this area that's rolling out is doing adaptive traffic signals. So as traffic progresses through a corridor, the idea would be to adjust the traffic timing to make sure that platoon of vehicles does not hit a red light. So progressing it through a corridor, which will really help in operation. And in some cases, it's almost adding another through lane. So that's one of the technologies, and that's being implemented today in this area. Lone Tree, Gruner Village. I think the city of Centennial are utilizing that. Another emerging technology, which is happening here this fall, and it's a pilot project with CDOT, and that's that's a Smart 25 pilot project. And what that is attempting to do is it prioritizes the throughput on I-25 northbound, and then it meters the ramps at certain, I guess, at the interchanges from Briargate all the way to University. And it's not just your typical metering; it's a metering that is monitoring traffic and gauges how I-25 is doing and adjusts how many cars are led onto I-25. So that it's going to be very interesting to see how that project works out. And the idea there is to increase the throughput on I-25 to overcome all the traffic jams and the stop and go that we see in the morning and in the morning rush. And it's almost like adding another through lane. They did this in Melbourne, Australia, and CDOT thinks it'll work here on the I-25 corridor. So those are two technologies that are coming about and being implemented now. So more to come. Autonomous vehicles has always been discussed as something that could help with traffic. Electronic vehicles is another technology that it's catching some traction, especially as it relates to dealing with greenhouse gases. So those are some of the emerging technologies that we see coming, and some that are coming very soon to a road near you.
So you mentioned Melbourne. It's easy to, for the layperson like myself, to look at something that's happening overseas, Europe, Asia, whatever, as being like, wow, why can't we do that here? And the most obvious example is roundabouts, which we're starting to see a little bit of here in the United States. But is there a reluctance to adopt measures that happen in other places, or does it have to be like Melbourne is probably a similar size as Denver? Is that why we're looking at something like Melbourne as a model for something we might do?
Yeah, that's a great question, Luke, and I don't know the full answer, but you're right. That there is some reluctance on adopting technologies that have been proven elsewhere. You're right about the roundabouts that they're going in for more, and there's also some other I say weird, some innovative intersections and interchanges that are being explored more here in the States. Like you mentioned, that partial continuous flow interchange or intersection at Gun Club and Quincy, that was innovative. There's only 3 of those in the state now. So these are some of the technologies that we need to look at and take a serious look at, and not just kick them to the side or disqualify them because they're used in another country. The Melbourne project, I'm not sure how CDOT learned about the Melbourne project, but I know that I-25 has been widened. It's a very wide road, and there's just not room to go wider anymore. So I know CDOT was looking for an innovative solution, and I think they found one. That pilot project will be starting here in December, and go to the CDOT website. And I think it's a 6-month project, and they'll have a report coming out at the end of it. And it's for northbound I-25 traffic from Briargate all the way to University. So the locals we're meeting with CDOT on the 4th of November to have conversations on how they're measuring the success of the project, how they're going to be making adjustments. We're also going to be monitoring that project as it relates to impacts to the local roads.
Great, yeah, and that's certainly an area that's going to be frequented by a lot of our listeners and residents here in the county. So we have time for another question or two. Let me give you the poll results of the last one, which was how satisfied have you been about your interactions with Arapahoe County government specifically? 29% have been very satisfied. 18% have been somewhat satisfied. 47% are neutral or it's not applicable. Nobody on this call has been somewhat dissatisfied, but 6% have been very dissatisfied. So for those 6%, send us a note. Tell us why. We'll try to make it better. Communications services at arapahogov.com is the best place to send that. Speaking of new technologies and getting around, does the county plan out or anticipate adding any new electric car charging stations? And how do you decide where those should go?
Yeah, that's a good question. And at this time, the county has not taken a position on that. A lot of those are privately funded, just like a gas station. But at this time, the county hasn't taken a position on putting those charging stations in place. Not to say that we won't in the future. And there's ways that you can look to determine where those electronic charging stations are. And I was surprised to see they were a little more concentrated than I thought they would be. One of the ways that we could start implementing charging stations within the county is do that through our planning process. So developments would be required to provide those charging stations. But once again, we would need to explore that option with the Board of County Commissioners. Brian Weimer sent me a note, and he did a little research, and that state highway widening, so that the gun club north of Quincy is on the CDOT's 10-year plan, but it's not funded. So I just wanted to provide that information to the group here.
Good to know.
Luke, this is Commissioner Holen. I would only add that we're very interested in looking at the possibility, based upon what the national transportation effort has been, to look at providing more charging stations, as well as converting our current fleet to electric. We're looking at that as a possibility. No decisions have been made formally yet, but from my perspective, I think it's something that we need definitely to explore. I serve on the regional Clean Air Commission, and we're very concerned about some of the deterioration of our air in certain areas of the metropolitan area, which needs to be addressed. And the majority of those problems are generated by fueled vehicles. And one way of addressing this in the long term is to look at converting more of the public and organizational transportation opportunities to moving towards electric vehicles that would address these pollution issues. So the answer is yes, but we haven't formulated a policy at this point. But we are looking at our new transportation, and the public works manager has had some experience in those areas, and we're looking at it. So distinct possibility in the future.
It seems like a multi-governmental level of initiative needs to be taken. Brian has some other thoughts on that as well regarding SB 260. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, so Senate Bill 21260 that was approved this past year, and that's the bill that established fees on gasoline, on deliveries of service, and that sort of thing. Actually established several enterprise funds within the state that will provide grants for densifying electric charging station, conversion of the fleets of different organizations, government being one. So I think that's going to open up opportunities further for doing that, and that's why we're concerned and looking at what that might look like within Arapahoe County. Also, the Federal Transportation Reauthorization Bill, the $1.2 trillion bill that's being that was passed by the Senate in Washington and now within the House, also has emphasis on electrification of both the fleet and providing charging stations. So that's going to provide additional money and emphasis for moving that type of technology forward. So those are two things that we're really starting to track and seeing what opportunities we might have within Arapahoe County with regard to that.
Excellent. All right. We have time for one more caller. Kim would like me, she's from Aurora, she would like me to read this question for Jim. Regarding traffic lights, why can't both lanes turn at the same time? Why do some lights say east and west? One direction gets the green, the opposite traffic gets yellow. While traffic comes through, the left light turns. Why can't they all be the same? I'm not sure if I'm doing justice to that question, but I think we've all experienced inconsistency on the road where you're wondering, like, why the rules are different for the people going the opposite way that I am.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not totally following the question, but traffic signals, that they're very important to keep us out of conflict with one another and convey a large amount of traffic. And each intersection is different. So some intersections or intersections might have a heavy left turn movement or a heavy through movement. So it's all a balancing act on trying to meet those needs in the intersection. And in some intersections, with that heavy left movement, there might be in a low through movement. There might be a permissive yellow allowed. So that's be a flashing yellow, allowing for left turning vehicles to move through on a green cycle with the oncoming traffic. So there's a lot of different strategies whenever you look at building that signal timing out. If you do make a change to one signal phase, so you give an extra left turn, little extra to the left turn green light, something in the interchange suffers. So that might be the through movement suffering or the other direction of traffic suffering, as in you have to take time from that signal, so there's less time for that other movement to be made.
Right.
So one of the other things that's done with these traffic signals and the timing and the phases is we look at traffic accident data, and if there's a certain accident pattern that we're seeing, we'll work to adjust the phases. So if there's some broadsides because there's left turning vehicles getting hit by the through movement, we might remove a permissive left turn, and we might make that just left turn on red only. So it just depends on what we're seeing in the data, and then also that accident data is really important. So I hope that answered your question. And then as you're traveling on a corridor, there might be a high priority for through movement, so that there's good progression there. And then the side streets might suffer in terms of a level of service, and they might not have much green time, or that green time might not come as frequent. So we're always playing these balancing acts as we look at the priority of the intersection, the turn movements of the intersection, and the time of day, and then also that accident component we're considering.
It sounds like you're describing the Santa Fe corridor to a T. Does it? How frequently do traffic engineers make these adjustments that you're talking about?
Oh yeah, that's a good question, Luke. I guess it varies. I know that Dr. Cog has a process that he used to adjusting timing along a corridor, and that's really important to do because there's multiple jurisdictions along a corridor. So that coordination effort from Dr.
Right.
Cog is important in getting those signal timings down, and that doesn't happen every year. And Brian Weimer, he might be able to provide a little, probably more accurate information. So Brian, if you're still on the line.
Brian is here.
Okay.
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, we try to look at those every 2 to 3 years, and that's really based on kind of growth of traffic, kind of what it looks like in the corridor. Some of these corridors are pretty stable and they don't have a lot of adjustment in traffic or movements, so they will go longer. But where we have a lot of growth occurring and modifications of traffic patterns, that's when we try to look at that those modifications and try to do them every 2 to 3 years. And like Jim said, Dr. Cog does have a process, Denver Regional Council of Governments, and that's a great opportunity that allows multiple jurisdictions to coordinate that timing through a specific corridor. As Jim mentioned previously, we have a lot of corridors that go in and out of unincorporated and cities, and that goes irrespective of jurisdictions, that allows us to do that type of timing. So that's really what we're trying to look at. And I think what you're describing as the question is what we call lead or lag. So the left turn leads in the cycle, so it goes first. And then you have a lag in it where it turns on, the left turns turn on at the end of the cycle. And a lot of that has to do with the demand of the left turn lanes in relationship to the direction of through lane traffic, and trying to balance that so the corridor is optimized in terms of traffic flow.
Okay, that makes sense. And if we can give a educational lesson to everyone, it's when the light's red, it's red. So wait your turn for next time. So that brings us to the bottom of the hour, and we've had a great discussion, and I want to thank everyone who joined us tonight with questions and on the phone or online. Like I said, recording of this will be available tomorrow on our website, and we're going to be doing conversations with other commissioners in their districts over the next several weeks. So check out our website in case you work in a different part of the county that you live in. You might find some different information on those. And also visit arapahogov.com. The Public Works and Development Department page has all kinds of information about the research and the videos and the changes that are coming, and everything you could possibly want to know about transportation in Arapahoe County. So thanks very much, and have a great evening.